What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Let's Chat with me, your host, Chris Corvan, where we deep dive into the creative minds behind incredible projects. Today, we're exploring cyberpunk noir that is going to leave you questioning humanity itself. Joining us today is Adam Bassett, a brilliant writer we've had the pleasure of chatting with before on the Dripping Creativity podcast. Adam is known for his incredible talents for weaving cyberpunk worlds, emotional depth, and his latest novel, Animus Paradox, takes it to the next level. Adam, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing much better now after that intro.
Jesus. I'm getting better at this shit. I'm getting better. All right, let me drop the synopsis, and then we're going to get into this. So, set in the gritty cyberpunk future, Animus Paradox dives into the chaotic lives of private investigator David and his partner, Mafalda. Mafalda?
Yes, I think so.
As they untangle a web of intrigue involving rogue rebels, high-tech mods, and the shadowy underworld of Italian megacities. This thrilling narrative blends action, emotional depth, and intricate world building, all while posing provocative questions about humanity and technology. And we are going to ask some questions about this shit because I am so invested. Okay, right off the bat, what inspired the cyberpunk setting and the cultural fusion within Animus Paradox?
So for that, we're going to have to go back to the short story this comes from in Digital Extremities. So when I was finishing editing that collection, one of the final stories that I wrote was also the final story in that collection. And it was based in central Italy in a fictional city around Civita di Bagnoregio, which is this ancient Etruscan town on a hill that today, right now in real life, is slowly falling apart. The hill is collapsing, and the town on top of it is collapsing with it. It's a big tourist attraction at the moment because the dying city is a fun thing to say that you got to saw. But long term, someone's going to have to do something, or it's kind of all just fall apart. So in this version of the 22nd century, they've decided to build walls around it to retain the remaining hill, and a whole major mega city has kind of cropped up around it. And that story is sort of David trying to find a lost kid. The Civita is kind of involved in that a little bit as a destination they end up going to. It's mostly just a fun playground. Like I found out about the location and I was like, I want to set a futuristic city around this 2,000-year-old town. Like that just sounds so fun. So that's kind of like where the location comes in from. This story was not intended. I hadn't planned for it. But then when we were editing that original short story in Digital Extremities, my editor was like, wait, there's this thing that happens kind of on the side, and I want to know where that goes. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't really have a resolution for that, do I? And I'm not going to add it to this story because that would be really distracting from the actual plot of finding this kid and David's whole thing that he goes through. So I was like, I guess I got to write something new if I'm gonna attempt this at all. And I had the original draft for it like early 2024. It took a while to actually get time to work on it, but it's a short novel. It's like 220 pages roughly, and so I worked on it over the summer, and here we are. This is my response to my editor when he said, "Where does this go?"
You know, that's the best stories come out of that type of shit. I love when that happens. All right, so David and Mafalda have a very complex dynamic there. How did you kind of approach developing their relationship in the story?
I just wanted to make them feel real. I didn't want everything to be too easy for them, even though they are good at what they do. And they do work well together, I think. They still are going to occasionally disagree. They see things in different ways. Mafalda is from Italy, whereas David is from New York, and then came over after he fought in a war, and made a new home for himself here. So there's going to be differences between them, and yeah, I think at the end of the day, just I wanted the relationship to feel real, even though the story is very much about like the events that happen around it. Like I wanted people to see them kind of supporting each other in whatever ways they were able to. So yeah, I think that's. I mean, that's the starting point, and then I just sort of went from there of like, how would this character try to support their partner? How would this character do it? Mafalda is kind of very work-centric, whereas David is like, well, if I can't help here with, like my through the work or what we're trying to accomplish in the plot, I'm just gonna like make it easy for her and then go cook something. Like find moments like that where they can just sort of take a breath and be themselves and help one another, and stuff like that.
So then, this is not actually on my list of questions here, but it's kind of when you're developing the characters and the story and all that, were there times where the characters' personalities and relationship changed where you thought the story was going to go, or did you adjust their relationship based on where you needed them to go?
I think everything fell into place pretty cleanly from the very beginning. This has been like weirdly one of the most smooth processes from like initial conception to the final product that I've ever had. Just I don't know why, it just worked out. Maybe because I'd already spent so much time with them in the short story from Digital Extremities. So when we come to the Animus Paradox, I'd already written a fairly long story. It was like 13,000 words. I've already spent time with them, and I basically finished that and then started this novel almost right away. So there was very little downtime. So I don't think I was skewing the characters or the plot at all to make certain things happen. It was more of asking, I think if anything, I would like adjust things for the pacing. So there were times when, like the rundown of the plot, the story that I had planned is like, it's very action focused. And there were times when it's like, I need to calm down here for a second and have a moment where people just get a chance to talk and have dinner or debate what they should do next, deal with the fallout from whatever just happened, like give the reader a moment to breathe and to get to know these characters and stuff like that. Especially considering like if you haven't already read the short story in Digital Extremities, like I didn't want that to be a requirement. So how do we bring people up to speed as well? And so when I needed that kind of slower pacing to kick in, I would kick in to see, like, I'd ask myself, what would these characters be doing in this moment if they have an hour free, if they have, a couple minutes to spend before they go out to find something. Even if it's something as simple as making coffee or, taking a rest or something, how do they feel about that? How do they interact with each other while they're doing that? What one example is that they have maybe an hour to kill while the people they're working with are getting some information. And, David is like, you need to relax. Like, I know we don't have a lot of time, but we have been on our feet since the morning. Things have only gotten worse. Like, take a minute for yourself, please. And then, like, he goes and does the same for himself. So, stuff like that. Like, basically, I would slow things down when I needed to, but never so much with the plot focus.
All right. Okay, now moving on to the next question, and I know I'm going to butcher these names, and I hate butchering names, but here we go. The tigress. I
think Tigres.
Tigres, okay.
And this is one of the things of like, there's a lot of Italian and Japanese in this story,
And
but
I don't know enough of it.
I have also exclusively interacted with these names in text.
I
So
hate that
we're
too.
both going to struggle a
Yeah.
little bit.
Okay, and then how would you pronounce Heredes? Heredes?
I believe Heredes.
Heredes? See, again, like, anyways, your incredibly vivid factions are incredibly vivid. Now that I'm completely screwed up on this question here, let me rephrase this from the start here. You have the factions within your story are incredibly vivid. What was your process for creating them?
So the Tigres had already kind of been a thing from Digital Extremities. They were not a major focus, but they existed. And I sort of just took what I knew about them from that perspective, from that story, and then expanded upon it in the ways, however, it made sense at the time. So, we learn in the short story that the Tigres have some enforcers and they can kind of like bully people around to do what they want. And that's really as deep as it goes. So for Animus Paradox, it's like, what are they trying to achieve? How do they maintain power? And the end result is basically like, they have this sort of kingpin figure, Mama Cinzia, who maintains control through bribery, through just installing the right people into powerful positions at different times. And they aren't inherently like a bad group of people, but they are very interested in maintaining power and controlling what's going on in the city of Miro Etrush and the kind of surrounding area. Not inherently villains, but they will do villainous stuff, especially if you cross them. So the Heredes were kind of, I need a villain. And they were basically a group of people who I could bring in from the outside who weren't previously in any of the prior stories. And, a big thing in this series, which is apparently a series now, a big thing about it is like access to fresh water, basically access to resources. Because, in this version of the future, things are not completely screwed up, but it's gotten harder to get certain things, one of them being fresh water. Which is something that's based in reality right now. We are having issues with getting fresh water, because of mining issues or land rights or just basic pollution that's happening, all that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of like, what if we dialed that up a little bit? And so the Heredes whole thing is like, we want to try and fix this problem, but they go about it in a very like gangster way, where it's like anybody who even so slightly crosses our path, gets in our way, is going to get a bullet in the head, or is going to, have some form of punishment. We'll like use them as leverage or something. And so that's sort of where that comes from, is like, what does that group look like? What kind of history might they have with the Tigres that makes them natural enemies? And, just a little bit of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Like that's kind of how their conflict kicks off, is the Tigres are kind of doing something else. And then the Heredes start to show up in multiple locations as they're looking for this thief, and it just sort of escalates. So yeah, I mean, I think somewhere in there I've answered the question.
You got it. You're good. So when it came to developing the themes of humanity and technology in the book, was there anything you were pulling from personal experience or personal wants from when you were younger? News stories? We obviously touched on the water aspect there. Was there anything else that you were pulling from?
This particular story is very, fast and furious. There's a lot of action and stuff like that. Like that's kind of possibly the main focus. it's not really supposed to be a super deep story. Like I've been saying, Digital Extremities was very introspective. Animus Paradox is we're gonna blow shit up. So there's not like a whole lot of outside stuff that I can point to where it's like, oh, I was trying to say that like this thing is bad or we should be fixing this. No, I mean like there's some general climate fiction themes in there, like the access to water thing, and like that's all happening kind of in the background still. And I think that the only other like major theme wasn't even climate or technological or anything like that. It was more about just like, you know, there's a history of violence between the Tigres and the Heredes. The Heredes show back up and it happens again. And, you know, the private investigators, David and Maff, are kind of thrown into the middle of all this. And David goes through his own thing where he's not about the case anymore. He's just trying to beat the Heredes, and has to sort of grapple with this question of like, how far is he going to go to do that? Like, what is the stopping point if there is one? And so that was really the main driving force behind this story. There is a lot of other stuff happening in the background, but it really is more about his journey, sort of from doing a job to wanting revenge and then figuring out how far that goes.
Perfect. And the story itself, and as we were just talking about the action there, it explores a lot of emotional resilience alongside high stake action. Did you find it challenging to balance this, or were those elements just kind of really easy to trail off into one another?
I think they were just so interconnected. Like in my head, they were happening at the same time. It wasn't like, you know, I need this scene for physical action and this scene for cerebral action or anything like that. It's more like, you know, as these things are happening, the characters are going to be thinking about them. They're going to be calculating and figuring out, you know, what their next move is going to be, and how they're going to live with that sometimes. So I mean, I think that the closest thing that really happened for me was kind of like what I was talking about with pacing earlier, is like, you know, there needs to be moments of downtime between those big action scenes, where people do get the chance to reflect, they get a chance to calm down, they get a chance to talk with each other, sometimes do anything but what's related to the plot. Sometimes it's just like, we're just not going to deal with it for a minute. So I think that's probably the closest thing to what you're asking about. But like, yeah, there's not, in my head, at least in this particular story, a strong difference between the physical action versus the stuff that they're going through in their head.
I dig it. All right, so let's talk a little more about the mods and all of that type of fun cyberpunk shit. What is there significance in the overall narrative?
I mean, they're a tool. They're something that helps the characters get what they're trying to do. A lot of them, maybe all of them, are just driven by what MacGuffin I need at the time, honestly. I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, there's a few in there that are just kind of like, especially toward the end, there's a final fight that takes place where I did change a few things in my final edit or two to do like little callbacks to Neuromancer and Cyberpunk 2077, just some of the Cyberpunk stuff that I personally love, I know a lot of people love. But for the most part, it's like, you know, I need a way for this character to look around the corner without being seen. So we're going to have sort of like an old-fashioned camera just sort of like pop off the shoulder and be able to look around the corner. You know, I need this person to be faster than normal. and they're physically fit, but also is there a way that we can like speed them up even faster? So some kind of mod like that. I mean, David himself, we established in the short story, and again here, he has synthetic eyes where he can like see in the dark and see infrared. I think that mattered a little bit more in the short story, but here there are a few scenes where it's like he's in a dark space and doesn't want to turn on a light to alert the people who are there, and so he can just kind of turn on night vision for a little bit. And we've got all the different stuff on the HUD, so he can pull up essentially web pages, documents, floor plans of buildings, the weather, he's getting ads on his optics and everything as well, which is a horrifying thing, but it allows
It's gonna happen. It's gonna
happen. Yeah.
It's the most realistic thing in there, man.
And those allow me to do a little bit of like fun world building too, which like help to remind readers like what time, like there was a moment writing this where I was like, oh my god, this whole story takes place over like 2 days, like 2 or 3 days, and it feels so much longer, and the characters feel like it's so much longer. And there's a point at which I literally put in the book where it's like, oh my god, everything that just happened yesterday.
You know, that kind of goes to the whole like Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop RPGs, where it's like you actually stop and look at the timeline of everything you just did, and it was like, oh, that was like 6 sessions we just did, and that was really only like an hour and a half of actual real time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. And it's just, you know, that's how it goes. That's how you get people falling in love so fast too. So like, you guys just met and you're in love. It was a really long day. You don't understand. All right.
That shared trauma really brings us together.
It does, man. It's probably not healthy, but it does. You actually answered the question about the setting, so we don't need to rehash that one. That was great because you covered that one in the start. What do you hope readers take away from Animus Paradox?
I mean, like I said, it's kind of just a fun story where stuff blows up and we get sword fights and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't say there is a message where it's like, you need to take this away. But as I said, David does go through this whole arc where he seeks vengeance and then has to kind of make a decision about how far he'll go. That, like I said, was kind of a major driving factor behind the story. I do think it's good to take a step back when you're feeling the way that he does, and maybe give things a thought.
Nah, come on, man.
Give it
to the impulses.
Yeah, I mean, like for all the action, it is like the story is kind of about. I'm trying to think about like how to say this in a way that's not going to give anything away. It is kind of about.
It's about something. You can just leave it at that. It's about something, and the readers need to figure it out, because if you say anything, it's going to ruin something, and you don't want to ruin it. That's perfectly valid.
Sure. Yeah. It's about balancing that, I guess, and like understanding like, yes, there is a time and a place to get pissed off and, you know, fuck shit up, but we'll leave it at that, I guess.
Solid. So when it came to the story itself, were there any moments or scenes that you either found really hard to write or ones that you really didn't want to end?
There's a scene a little before halfway through where the tone shifts. This is sort of where, like I've said, it goes from this is a job where we're finding the whole story, by the way, like we've talked about a lot of like Heredes versus Tigres stuff. This whole thing begins because a thief stole from the Tigres and they're trying to track them down. But there is a moment where that shifts, where it sort of becomes no longer about that. And now it's like, we just want revenge against the Heredes. And that was maybe one of the hardest ones to write because it's not a fair fight what ends up happening. One of the ones that I don't think I wanted to end might have been like the response to that scene, because it was basically just like action hero movie star moment where like I just sort of like for the first time, because there had been action scenes in the book, but this is the first time where I felt like I sort of got to let loose a little bit and just like have these heavily modified characters go at each other. You know, people who should not have military mods, who have them, who are like wielding heavy weapons and super sharp blades and all this kind of stuff. And like, that was just a super fun scene to write. And it didn't make sense for it to drag on. So it's kind of like, I got in and I got out, but I really wanted to stick around for like a little bit longer. It wouldn't have made sense. Like the main character in that scene would have died.
I totally get that. In one of the other short stories part of that series I was telling you about there, it's a very action heavy short story, and there were so many scenes where I was like, this is just entirely too much fun. And then I went back and I was like, okay, this is actually a little too much. I need a this is too much cool shit happening and it's getting lost. So all right, then I guess kind of to wrap it up before we answer some fun questions here, this story is part of the Digital Extremity series. How does it expand on everything else that has come before it? How do you feel this is going to help incorporate the future of the series?
So each story in this series, I'm pretty dedicated to being a standalone. They are all going to be in the same setting, and there may be some characters crossing over, similar to how, like, you know, David and Math were from Digital Extremities, a story in there, and we see them again here, obviously, in Animus Paradox. But the stories are completely different. Like, the thing that they were doing in the short story is resolved in the short story, and then the thing that's happening in Animus Paradox, yes, it begins in the short story, but it's not resolved there, and I catch you up to speed in Animus Paradox about what's going on, and we resolve it here. This, I expect, will be the last story from David and Math in the series period. I have some plans for what might be coming next. I have not fully drafted all that out, so I don't want to say too much about it. And I don't think I'll be able to publish for a while on those because I'm working on some other projects. But I am very excited about them. They're going to continue to be in this setting. There is a character from Animus Paradox, which I think will carry over to both of them in some way. But again, they will all be individual standalone stories. I have a tendency to go against like continuous series right now. There's just so many good books out there, and it's so hard to keep up. And I don't think it makes sense to add another series where you have to read X number of books, like even short ones. I'm really enjoying the space I'm in right now of releasing short stories, short books, and if you want more, you can have it. And if you are happy with what you read and you're done, then that's cool too. I think like that is just a space I'm happy to be in right now.
I 100% agree. That's actually what I love to do with my stuff too. It's developing a world over a character, and I think it's better for readers because, again, as you said, you don't have to read from the start and go through. You can jump in at any point, and you're like, oh, I wish there was more in this. Oh shit, there is more, and it's something completely different with a different person, and it's fleshing out a universe over top of a character's timeline, and I love that. I think that's the best way to go about doing it. It's more fun. It's more freeing, where you can go, yeah, I can do whatever the hell I want.
I definitely see the appeal in like a regular series, and I think for readers, like once you're invested, it's a lot easier for them to continue to be invested because you like the character and you want to see what they do next. but yeah, like I feel like there's enough of that out there. I feel like I'm able to do something a little bit different with this, especially because like we've already established that this world is going to exist across pretty much the entire world. The short story collection spans a bunch of different places in the US and Canada, but also Argentina and Norway and Italy, and this whole story takes place in central Italy. There's some really interesting destinations for the next couple I have lightly drafted as well, and I'm very excited about. So I'm excited to like keep exploring that.
Perfect. All right, now that we're done with the book diving one, let's have a little fun with it and ask some random shit here. What is one hidden detail about the world of Animus Paradox and Extremities that readers may never discover on their own, that you know, and that's never actually relevant to anything happening, but it's just something you know is there?
Before I get into the question, I just wanted to share, because I think you would like this, talking about the creatures in your stories and the kind of vibe you like. Did I ever show you 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart, this short story collection? It's a short story collection by Jenna Rose Nethercott, an author local here in Vermont. And it's all very eerie, like folklore based. Hard to say horror, but like there's a story about a girl who can't help but drown. Like literally, if she has an opportunity to encounter water, she will drown.
Cool.
Like just weird stuff like that. The titular story in this is basically like a list of fantastical creatures that she made up, and is like recording entries on like facts about this creature, and there's little illustrations of all of them.
Oh, I love it.
And each one is like its own little Wikipedia page description and everything.
Oh, I dig it. Yeah, I got the webpage pulled up with the book on it. I'll definitely be picking it up because that is awesome.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like genuinely, this collection is like I've seen other people review it and they're like, this is so weird, I hate it. But it's like, if you're down for that kind of thing,
that's my type of shit
like
right there. All right, so what is one hidden detail about the world of Animus Paradox and the entire world that readers may never discover?
So a lot of the time we spend in this setting is in the real, like in the regular world, but there is all of this like crazy stuff happening in the net, in the cyberspace area as well. To interface with that, you have to have a lot of mods. You have to be resistant to the effects it can have on a person. There's a story in the short story collection in Digital Extremities where we kind of get a sense of how long somebody can be in the net, and it's not very long. So like it's a very dangerous thing to be doing, but it's extremely valuable. And there's this whole like thing happening behind the scenes. We do allude to it a few times in different stories, but we never see it through any character's point of view so far, where like different governments and companies are basically headhunting people who are able to interface with the net for long periods of time, and turning them into like a black ops attack force or a defensive force to prevent those attacks. And there's a line somewhere in, I think, Animus Paradox, where David has like some experience working with the people who used to do this, He used to like protect them while they were in the net, because you're kind of defenseless in the real when that's happening. And so he makes a kind of offhanded comment at one point, like, the world is quietly exploding right now. Just nobody realizes it until something actually explodes, like until one of those attacks actually works, or something slips through those defenses. But there is like this whole kind of like secret, or not necessarily secret, but like this quietly happening war going on in the background, competing over the best weapons to have in this new environment, and those are just like the people and the mods they have. Some of them to the extent where it's really hard to tell if they're still human anymore. The amount of organics they have versus the mods they have, it definitely skews toward mods. We do get a glimpse of that in this story. One of the characters who are capable of doing this, in Laragna, who is kind of like an independent operator within this space, who has so far been able to sort of evade these corporations and governments and sort of do their own thing, have their own contract deals, and more or less remain off their grid. And when we meet them, it's like they don't even have eyes anymore, and they don't even have eyes that look like normal eyes like David has. Hers or theirs are like multiple LEDs. We play into the spider name. Laragna means spider, and so we've got like little spider eyes that are beady and stuff, and the skin is described as like metal scales that kind of just cross over their body and everything. There's just not a lot of human features left. So that's something that we've talked about a few times, but we haven't gotten any characters who go into the net yet. We haven't gotten anybody dealing with that world yet. Maybe we will at some point in the future, but so far things have been pretty grounded so far.
Nice. Love it. All right. So if Animus Paradox was adapted into a movie or series, who are you casting as David, Mafalda, and Mama Cinzia?
There were specific actors and actresses who I referenced when talking with an artist about the cover art, and we have some character art from the short story as well. I cannot remember any of their names. Genuinely, no idea. But it'd probably be them. Yeah. I'm really bad with actors' names.
Hey, you know what? It happens. It happens. There's nothing wrong. If you remember sometime between now and when I edit this, throw it at me. It's fine. All right. So then let's kind of wrap this one up and just say, hey, what's next for this universe, or for you? What's coming up?
So next up for me, I'm going to be taking a break from the Digital Extremities series. I'm working right now, actually before we started chatting today, I was working on editing a book all about map design. I think I might have talked about that with you last time as well, but it is getting close. I've got a couple more things coming in that I'm expecting from some folks who are going to be giving me some other examples and maps to use in the book. Just trying to bring in more perspectives other than my own about how to make good maps, how to improve your world building, because this book is like really about, it begins as a book about geology and then talking about the people and creatures that live here, and then at the very end we get into like how do you bring all this together and make a really interesting map. So I think there's going to be a lot in here for a lot of different people. And I've got a bunch of examples from folks like P.L. Stewart, who I spoke with, and he's got like this whole Atlantis-based fantasy series that's going on right now, which is really interesting. And he talked a little bit about, like, for example, how the climate of different places can affect the way that these people go to war, and the ways that can hinder or help them. I've got some words from Isaac Stewart, who is the map designer and art director for Brandon Sanderson. And he was able to give me a couple of his thoughts on approaching map design as well. So really a lot of people who kind of came together and helped me out, giving me some of their thoughts as well about all this. I'm almost done this edit. Like I said, I've got a couple of things coming through, and then just sort of refining over the next couple months, hoping to release that in 2025.
Perfect. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say after that, like I said, I have a couple of things in the works for more Digital Extremities stories, but that probably won't be realized until 2026, I assume.
So far in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you know how publishing works. Like everything, even on a self-publishing scale, everything moves slow.
I say that, and meanwhile, I'm already like half booked up all the way through most of 2025 right now. So yeah, no, that makes sense. So tired. All right, so then finally, to wrap this one up, I need you to sell us the book, why people should do it as tightly and under 59 seconds as possible, and then give us the release date.
Okay. So Animus Paradox, as you've heard, is an action-packed story that still takes a little bit of time to wind down here and there. It is a very short book at just about 220, 230 pages. So it'll work right into your TBR and help you stack those 2025 books read goals. And there's more to come. So if you enjoy the world, this is going to be a self-contained story, but there will be more that you can check out, whether it's the short story collection that's already out in Digital Extremities or more to come later on in other short novels.
Perfect.
And it comes out on the 27th of January. Ebook for sure, paperback, I don't know, but hopefully also the 27th.
Love it. Animus Paradox is an electrifying blend of cyberpunk action and mystery. Adam crafts a world teeming with layered characters and cultural nuances, making every scene pulse with life. The emotional stakes and dynamic storytelling keep you hooked from the start to finish. If you're into smart, fast-paced storytelling with heart, this one is for you. Make sure to check it out January 27th. All the links for everything below, where you can find Adam, where you can find the book, where you can do whatever the hell you want to do. It is down there. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion on Animus Paradox. I just need you to say goodbye.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure as always. And thank you for listening.
Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Let's Chat with me, your host, Chris Corvan. You can find me everywhere at Chris of the Void. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date, because I have so much amazing shit coming in 2025. I'm so excited. Featuring amazing creatives and their works. We'll see you next time. Stay creative. Stay inspired. Bye.